And then I'm going to share so that you guys can see what's going on. And then we're going to talk about trials and juries and all that kind of fun stuff. Who in here, anyone in here enjoy like criminal law or Criminal Minds or Law and Order? So I do too. I love Criminal Minds. I love Law and Order. She went home. She did the homeschool thing. Rachel's mad, Lexi, that you're doing homeschool. But yeah, I love all those shows. So I'm sure some of this is familiar to you guys. There's a lot of definitions that are on the review sheet, but I think some of these are going to be easy for you because you guys know it. So today we're just talking about trials and appeals, which is something that you're familiar with. Tomorrow we're going to start with the Supreme Court. And those upper courts are a little bit different and a little bit harder to understand, but this is stuff I'm sure you're all familiar with. I'm sure most of us, I think we talked about it last week, at one time of our lives have probably been involved in the system for whatever reason, whether it was a speeding ticket or whatever. I think that Rachel's laughing. It's something that I think most kids are very familiar with. So we're going to do trials. Okay, can everybody see the screen at home? The trial screen?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So, learning target. Evaluate the process of the judicial branch as the government uses it to govern. Okay. So, today, to-do list for today. I don't have the whole week's ready because like I said, guys, some of these days I'm just doing it one day at a time, but I have the connection to the judicial branch organizer by the end of the day. You should have lessons 1 through 4. And even if you don't today, if you can get chapter 13, chapter 14 done by the end of this week, you'll be in good shape. And then we're going to play a game. That's going to be your assignment for today. So like I said, you can either play it with the class, but if you do play with the class, I want you like participating. So those of you online, I'll have you guys unmute so you can just like shout out answers. Okay, legal terminology. Like I said, some of this is going to be review for you guys because you've seen it before, you've seen it on TV, but we've got our plaintiff and defendant. So this is the party who brings suit or legal action against the defendant in court, and this is who the complaint is made against. So when you're watching Law and Order, the prosecutors would be the plaintiffs. So it would be like the state of New York or the city of Monroe. And the defendant would be the person that's defending. We're also going to talk about civil courts. So like if one person sues another person, the person doing the suing would be the plaintiff. The person being sued would be the defendant. Does that make sense?
So it's like the action is like I'm making it towards you.
Yep. Yep. So if Rachel's accusing me of something in civil court, then she would be the plaintiff and I would be the defendant. In criminal court cases, the plaintiff is always like whoever is doing the prosecuting. So it could be the city, the state, the nation. You have 2 types of lawyers in general. You have a prosecutor and a defense lawyer. This is more for criminal law. So a prosecutor represents the government in a criminal case. So they're the person that is trying the case. The defense lawyer is the person that's representing the person accused of making a case. And a public defender works for free. So everyone is entitled to a lawyer, whether they can pay for it or not. So the government will provide a public defender if a person can't pay for it themselves. When you're watching those TV court dramas, you might see both public defenders and like high-priced lawyers. And these are for criminal cases. In the case of a civil court or family court, what's that? You can also get a lawyer to represent you. So like, once again, because Rachel's the only one in the classroom, if Rachel was suing me, I would probably get a lawyer and be like, you can't sue me for that or whatever. In family court, think of divorce court. Both parties might have a lawyer And they're not really defense lawyers then, they're
So,
different kind of lawyers,
Judge-
family court lawyers.
Like Judge Judy and stuff, those
Yes.
people, like, some of the things that people try to sue people over is, like, ridiculous.
Yes. Yes.
This lady got hit in the face with a football, and, like, there was plenty of other people around. It was obviously an accident. And she wanted to sue him for, like, $1,500.
Yeah, Rachel's laughing because people sue other people for the stupidest things. And the truth is, if you go to court, it's going to cost you money because you have to pay the court fees, even if you win or if you don't win. So whoever is the plaintiff is going to have to pay the court fees. The defendant doesn't have to pay the court fees because they're not the one that is bringing something to court. So, choose wisely if you ever do have to sue somebody to go to court. A lot of things in our nation are settled outside of court, and a lot of things are settled through insurance companies. And there's a slide in here. Oops. When you guys are at home and have a little time, that it lists all the civil and the criminal things. So, some more things: jury, grand jury, indictment, and judge. You guys know what a judge is. All right. So, a jury, group of citizens who hear evidence during a trial and give a verdict. This is we are allowed this due to the Sixth Amendment. Yes.
So, how do you get, like, selected for jury?
Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. Rachel asked how you get selected for jury duty, and I'll talk about that because my husband just actually got something in the mail. So I'll talk to you guys about that.
Cool.
The grand jury, a group that hears charges against a suspect and decides whether there is sufficient evidence to bring that person to trial. So, in more serious cases, before you even get to a jury trial, which when you guys are watching TV and you're watching like criminal justice shows, usually you're seeing that trial, that jury trial.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're not seeing is what happens beforehand is the grand jury, which means in serious cases, so not everything, not like traffic court, things like that, but in a serious case, especially like murder, before you even get to trial, one of your Fifth Amendment rights is that a grand jury will even decide if it's worth going to trial. So,
because then, like, it would be a big waste of money if there wasn't sufficient evidence.
Right. So Rachel decided, it would be a waste of money if there wasn't sufficient evidence. I'm going to turn this because you guys are looking at nothing.
Because that's why I don't understand why the police try to, like, solve it right then and there. Like, because there's some cases, I'm not saying in all cases,
yes,
but there's, like, some cases where they're, like, try to solve it right then and there. They think they know who it is. And then they go to trial, and they're like, there's no evidence.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're like, oh.
Right.
Pointless.
So, a grand jury saves a lot of money for the courts because if something doesn't have merit, it doesn't go.
Mm-hmm.
You can also serve on grand jury versus jury. So we'll talk about that too. And an indictment is just that formal charge. And I'm sure you guys recognize that term because you've seen it on television probably 100 times. Okay, I know this is really small. This is in your book. But this is just talking about criminal versus civil cases. So just some examples. Criminal law would be an injury to the public. It's prosecuted by the government. Attorneys are provided. The burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. So you guys have heard that lots of times.
Mm-hmm.
You have to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt. That's any criminal law trial. Criminal conviction may result in civil disabilities or loss of liberty. So when you go through a criminal law case, loss of liberty would be you're going to jail. You also might have fines to pay. So that's what that civil disabilities is. Penalties potentially include loss of liberty. Civil would be a private injury or wrong. So if Lexi trips on the doorstep going into my house, my personal house, because there's ice and I didn't shovel the walk, she could sue me. And it can happen. That's why if you live in the city, like when I lived in the city, you want to make sure you keep your walks safe, because if somebody falls on the walk in front of your house, even though the sidewalk is actually owned by the city, they still sue you because it's technically your property, which is just the weirdest thing. But so that's what you want to keep your walks like cleaned off. A plaintiff sues a defendant. Parties must provide their own attorneys. The burden of proof is preponderance of evidence. So what that means, and that's kind of a weird statement, is in a civil trial, it's not beyond a reasonable doubt, because you're not necessarily saying that, somebody killed somebody. What it is here is just you have to have enough evidence that the judge agrees that somebody must pay the other person. So there's no jury there. There's no civil disabilities and no loss of liberty. So civil disabilities would be like when you're a felon, you lose your right to vote. So that's not going to happen, and you don't go to jail for civil court, but you could typically have to pay monetary
Why do
things.
you lose your right to vote?
It's in the Constitution. So Okay, so this is just what was on the other screen, just saying criminal trial courts hear crimes such as burglary, murder. Civil is more when accuses one or another of causing harm. That harm can be monetary. Okay, trial, we're going to talk about jurisdiction, but jurisdiction is like who's going to see the court case. When you're talking about a civil court situation, generally it's in your county, county court. If it's a federal thing, then it would be in a federal court. So original jurisdiction, like let's say I sue Cheyenne for something, because we both live in Monroe area, it would go to Greene County Court.
Oh, really quick.
Yes.
So the police once told me like they were outside of their jurisdiction to like do anything.
Yes.
So like that's because they are in Greene County.
Yes.
Right? Okay, so
Rachel said there's a situation where a police officer said they were outside their jurisdiction. And that's the other thing with police officers. Mm-hmm. Monroe City cops only deal with things that happen in the city and town of Monroe for most things. Now, if a murder happens in Monroe,
that would be crazy.
They can go other places to find evidence, but the city of Monroe would have original jurisdiction. So it would be tried in Greene County, but it would be like city of Monroe's jurisdiction. You see this a lot of times on like those Law and Order shows where original jurisdiction is, let's say in New York City, but then the feds come in. So the FBI gets involved. Well, now it's a federal case, so it goes to federal jurisdiction. So if you just watch those shows, you're going to see these words come up. But jurisdiction is you're going to try something where it happened. If it happens out in the countryside outside of Monroe, you're looking at Greene County, or 15 miles to the west, Lafayette, or 20 miles to the east, Rock. So jurisdiction is really important as to like where a case is going to be tried. This is in your book. It's not one of your vocab words, but the United States has an adversarial system in which each side presents witnesses and evidence. That's a good thing. That just means that even if you do something wrong, you can call people to talk about you on your behalf. In some countries, you can't do that. And the judge functions as a referee, especially in criminal cases. A judge is there to make sure that everything is fair. This is just the course in the Constitution where you can find each of these things in the Constitution. I'm not going to ask you which amendment guarantees these, but I don't think it's a bad thing to take a look at. But you don't have to memorize it. Okay, so those of you at home, there's just like 4 situations here. You tell me what you would do. So I'll read them, and then if you guys at home want to shout out, you can. Otherwise, I know Rachel will. So, okay. So your client was apprehended after stealing a $1,000 necklace from a jewelry store. Surveillance camera footage shows her taking the item. So they have her on camera taking the item. She has been charged with grand theft, but the prosecutor is offering Jennifer the chance to plead guilty to a lesser charge of shoplifting to avoid trial. What do you advise her to do? So if you were her lawyer, what would you have her do? She was caught on camera stealing something. Should she go to jury trial and take her chances, or should she take a plea bargain, which is a lesser charge?
Because if she goes to trial, she's clearly guilty.
Yeah, she's clearly guilty. So Rachel says she should take the plea bargain. Those of you at home agree?
And it's a lesser charge?
Yeah, it's a lesser charge.
She's getting,
might have been a first offense, so I would absolutely take the plea bargain. Okay, your client has been arrested for defrauding investors. The case involves highly technical and complicated financial regulations. The victims of the alleged fraud are disabled veterans who now face poverty. What do you advise your client to do? Request a jury trial, request a bench trial with no jury. We didn't talk about bench trials.
Go to jail, bro.
You could probably request a bench trial because then just the judge would decide.
Yeah.
A jury most likely is not going to look favorably on a case like this.
Because it is disabled like veterans.
Yep. And a bench trial can't happen with all cases. So, but I think with monetary ones they can. Okay. Your client is facing first-degree murder charges. He insists that he is innocent and you believe there's considerable evidence supporting his claim. The state is offering a plea deal to drop the charges to second-degree murder, which would result in a 20-year sentence. What do you advise him to do? So he claims he's innocent and there's evidence to say that he is.
I would request a jury trial.
Yep, Rachel would request a jury trial. I think I would too. Anyone else? Yeah, you want a jury of your peers to hear that information. And then finally, you were involved in a traffic accident at a busy downtown intersection. Many bystanders witnessed what happened. Although you believe the other party was at fault, he is suing you in civil court for damages to his car. How would you like this case to be decided, by judge or jury? This is where you would use a bench trial. This is like a Judge Judy case.
Okay.
So if anybody's watched Judge Judy or any of those other judge shows on TV, this is kind of what they're talking about here, is that just a judge is going to see one person suing another, and if they see enough evidence of what happened, you can sue in civil court, and then the judge will decide.
How did they even get that stuff on TV?
I have no idea, Rachel. I don't even know if that stuff is real.
Because, like, I'm pretty sure you can't, like, bring your phone in, right? You aren't supposed to, like...
Oh, yeah. I would think so.
Because every time I've been to court, like, no phone. Like,
no
one could have a phone, anything that could...
But they're civil trials, so they're a little different.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Rachel's just asking, are those things on TV real? And my answer is I have no idea. Probably not. All right. Okay, so then we talk about appeals. So appeals is the next section in your book. So an appeal is what you do if you lose your case, but you think that you were in the right. So appeals are possible when the losing party can claim an error of law affected the outcome, and we're going to do a little thing on this in just a second. Mistakes on part of the judge in applying the law or in allowing evidence are errors of law. Procedural due process ensures a fair trial by requiring that consistent procedures are followed. If a constitutional guarantee is violated, the case can be appealed. So there's two ways that you can file for appeal. Error of the law did something wrong, or procedural due process, meaning your constitutional rights were infringed upon. So, okay, I have this as a little whiteboard thing. Hold on. That's not what I want. There it is. Okay, so once again, I'll read them, and then you guys can holler from online if you want. Okay, there are typically only two reasons that a losing party can appeal a court decision: errors of law or due process. So here's the examples. Actually, I'm going to bring this up.
I think the first one's error of law.
So I'll stand up here. A jury found Boris guilty of vandalism. During the trial, it was revealed that officers never read him his rights. So is that an error of law or is that due process? So due process, you're talking about constitutional mistakes, and error of law, you're talking about there was legally, something wasn't done legally.
So the first one would probably be error of law because you're supposed to read people their rights, right?
Is that constitutional?
Yeah.
That's constitutional. So constitutional is due process. Yep. Okay. So constitutional is due process. During Farrah's trial, the judge allowed prosecutors to present evidence that had been tampered with while in storage. The evidence convinced the jury of her guilt.
Error of law.
That is an error of law. Correct. And never mind. I guess I will stay seated. All right. After his guilty verdict, Gavin's lawyers found out that 2 of the juries were friends with the prosecuting attorney.
Isn't that called something like something bias?
Yes. Something. I don't know what the technical term of it. So is that an error of law or constitutional due process issue?
Probably. I don't know if it's probably error of law because I don't know if it's in the Constitution about like can't be friends with so-and-so.
Okay. A jury found Eli guilty based on a confession he signed. An officer later revealed that before signing, Eli was deprived of food for 3 days in jail.
Due process.
Due process.
Like abuse?
Yes, and you're entitled to be treated fairly,
right.
Basically, as part of the Constitution. Before sending the jury to deliberate in Angela's trial, the judge informed the jurors they should return a guilty verdict if a simple majority of them votes to convict. So the judge says, hey, as long as most of you think she's guilty, you should come back as guilty. And obviously that's not right. So is that constitutional or a law?
Law, I think.
During Sally's trial, the judge, without giving a reason, did not allow eyewitnesses to testify.
What? That judge is corrupt.
Let's put her here. Let's just see what it says. Okay, we got 2 wrong. So this is, okay, so we got the 1 wrong. After guilty verdict, the lawyers found out that the 2 jurors, because, and you hear this on court cases, his due process wasn't met. So basically, that's part of the procedure is that you can't, like, anybody involved in the trial can't have an invested interest in the trial. So, like, if you're friends with the prosecutor, why wouldn't you do the things that the prosecutor want to, like, find somebody guilty? So that's due process. And this is just illegal. A judge can't deny a witness or eyewitness testimony. He can't. So that's why that was under legal. Does that stuff make sense, though, guys?
I think every time I've been to court, like, for literally anything, they all, like, frick me over, basically. Swear. Because, like, I obviously don't know what I know now about, like, court and stuff, but they definitely, because I'm a minor, I don't know if it's different.
And we can talk about that. As a minor, you don't have all the same rights that you would have if you were an adult. And it depends what you're in court for.
Aren't they, like, before the police talk to me, aren't my Miranda rights supposed to be, like,
Read?
Yeah, to me, aren't they?
Yeah, and your parents are supposed to be present if you're under 18. Police cannot talk to you if you're under 18 without your parents present.
I need this too.
You guys can know that. Like, if you talk to them, that's different, but you don't have to talk to them until a parent is present.
Like, when I got pulled over, I told them, I'm not talking until my dad gets here. I said nothing to them. I just sat in the car.
And they can't make you. Yep.
And they're like, okay. And
yeah.
They went and sat in their car.
Then they can do that. I mean, they can make you sit there, but.
Yeah, I was like, I thought I was sitting here waiting. But I'm not, because I do not like the police. Every time I've just had a very bad.
Let's come back to that, just so I can get the kids at home. We can talk about it though. Yeah, what's up?
So, like what Rachel said, I've had the same thing happen to me. Like, when I was, like, 16, I got pulled over for something, and there was no parent present, and they literally put me in handcuffs and everything.
Well, they can do that. They can arrest you.
It depends on, like, what.
Isn't your parents supposed to be present?
No.
Like, if they even talk to you, like, I didn't do nothing. They just put me in handcuffs until my parents, like, they called my parents.
No, they can do that as long as they treat you, like, well, until your parents, like, they can't make you say anything until your parents get there, but they can absolutely arrest you without your parents being there.
Another time, me and my friends got pulled over. They arrested all of us, and we all sat in the same car.
Yep.
And they just put us in the cop car, and we're like, we're gonna wait till your parents get here, because it was super dark. They don't know who we are.
Yeah.
So it's like better be safe than sorry. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, so Rachel said there's a
Although
situation
dumb
where
that they
everyone in
arrested
her car was arrested and they just waited until parents came to pick them up. It also depends on what the situation is. So if it's something pretty minor, that's what cops are going to do. They're going to call your parents. If the parents aren't around and can't come get you, they'll probably bring you down to the police station.
Yeah, and somebody else had to pick me up. 'Cause
Yeah.
My dad
Yeah,
was
they
in
used
Texas.
to bring me to my house because
Yeah, or they can bring you to your house too. Yeah, if they're local.
Well, I was in Warren, and they're not going to let me drive all the way out here, so I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And then one of my friends picked me up. But,
Yeah, once I'm done recording, I've got some stories for you because one of my roommates in college, her boyfriend was a cop, and he had some funny stories. So okay, so this is just talking about appeals. So if you appeal something, it's because you feel there was either an error of law or your due process rights were infringed on, and in that case, you can have a lawyer go to court for you with you. The ruling of the court, there's no jury there. So when you appeal a case, it's going to go to one of the state courts, not like it wouldn't go back to Greene County. It'll go to a court of appeal. And there's a chart in your book that shows all the different courts. I don't think I have it in the slideshow, but I can find it and like show you what it is. But you're still in the state of Wisconsin, so you would go to like a local court of appeal. There's 93. No, there's more than that. But there's many all over the nation. Every state has a court that you go to next. So the judges will explain their decision in a written opinion. So it'll either be majority, concurring, or dissenting. So if the majority would be whoever agrees most, that would be your majority. Then there's a minority opinion, would be people that don't agree with the rest. Concurring would be you agree that whatever happened in the trial should stand or not stand, but your opinion as to why is a little bit different than the majority opinion. So those are some of your definitions that you guys have to look up. So just make sure you understand. Majority and minority are easy because majority just means most people. Minority means less. Oops, somebody's sending me something. Oh. Wait, Cheyenne, you can hear me now, right? I just saw your chat.
Yeah, I can hear you. I just logged in and logged back in.
Okay.
Logged out and back in.
And this is just how, if you appealed something, how it would go through the system. So you'd have your trial court. Appeals court has appellate jurisdiction. So there's that jurisdiction again. Appellate jurisdiction just means that it's the appeals court. And like I said, there's numerous appeals court throughout the nation, but there's definitely one or more for each state. If it doesn't make it through this lower court, you can actually appeal to higher courts. So we have a Wisconsin Supreme Court that if it was a local issue or a criminal issue, that's probably where it would stop. If it's a constitutional issue, it can go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. But most issues get stopped by the state Supreme Courts if they're not constitutional issues. The United States Supreme Court deals mostly with constitutional issues. Yes. Yeah, go ahead. Well, wait, I'm almost done. Hold just 1 second. Okay, precedents. Have you guys heard of precedent? That's another word you might hear when you're watching a cop show. Precedent just means that when judges and lawyers are looking at cases, they look at precedent, which means they're looking at how things were ruled on in the past to help make their decisions now. Some things are unprecedented. You've probably heard that term before. For example, a lot of things with technology, when you're looking at cell phones and the internet and things like that, we don't have 250 years of history to look at for precedent because we didn't have the internet until about 20 years ago. A little bit longer than that. But cell phones and the technology that we have on cell phones nowadays, we did not have even 10 years ago with the technology that they have today. So when you're talking about something being unprecedented, it just means it never happened before, so they have nothing to look at. Most court cases, when you're looking at murder or suing somebody or whatever, the judges around the nation have heard those cases in different situations over and over again. So they'll look at precedent. You don't have to know this. This is a Latin term, stare decisis, means makes the law predictable and provides stability. Basically, it's just saying by using precedent, if you go to court in Monroe or you go to court in California, you're going to get the same trial. That's not always true, but that's the hope. Appellate courts may rarely overturn one of their early precedents. So precedent is rarely overturned, meaning if somebody decides something because of precedent, because of things that have happened in the past, it's going to be much harder to change that than if new evidence is found, like in DNA cases. Okay, there's a video here that you guys can watch. And then here's the jury game I want to play. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.